from the world you know. Larry just wants a friend. Maybe we should stop reading. Will you be Larry's friend?
Hello everybody, welcome back to Screenstars. I'm here today to bring you my review for the 2020 horror film Come Play. The film is written and directed by Jacob Chase and it's based on his own short film. And it stars Azie Robertson, Gillian Jacobs and John Gallagher Jr. Now the film focuses on Azie Robertson's character, Oliver, who is a young autistic boy who struggles to communicate, struggles to make friends, struggles to make connections, and he's very much looked after by his mum and dad, very protective, even though they're going through a difficult time as parents. He is very much into technology, so he likes his tablets, he likes his phones, he uses a phone to communicate, he'll press certain buttons which will convey what he's feeling and his thoughts, all that kind of stuff. And then this one day, there is like a story pops up on his phone, Misunderstood Monsters, I think it's called. And it's a monster called Larry. And the more he reads the story, the more his environment around him becomes paranormal, weird, lights blow out, lights flicker, and you get a real sense of a presence. And this Larry, this entity, very much wants to be Oliver's friend, and the film then progresses from there. Right, what are my thoughts on Come Play? Well, this is, I didn't actually know an awful lot about this film. This is another film that's, I think, come on Netflix fairly recently. And I was flicking through a few nights ago and saw it on Netflix, and I thought, oh, well, we shall give this one a go. We fancied a bit of a horror. And we watched it. And while I thought this film had a great deal of potential, I thought the premise was interesting. Ultimately, I think it kind of devolves into a little bit of silliness. Almost. I thought the setup here was really interesting, you know, this young autistic boy, and I do think it's a fairly impressive performance by the young Azie Robertson, who plays this young autistic boy, Oliver. I think he does a pretty good job here. I think sometimes Hollywood and their portrayal, especially with children with autism in films, can be a little bit cliched. Whereas this one actually works particularly well. I think they don't lean really heavily into it. But I think it comes across quite well in the fact that he struggles to make connections, he struggles to retain friends, all that kind of stuff. You know, he's getting bullied at school, you know, he's got a strained relationship, if you like, with his mum and dad because he struggles to kind of connect with them, all that kind of stuff. But I thought it was a fairly impressive performance by that young man. And I thought Gillian Jacobs and John Gallagher Jr. both did well as well, playing his parents. And the setup of the concept was very, very interesting. But it almost as well doesn't play by its own rules, this film. And a lot of things that happen in this film, you kind of question, you're thinking, well, what if this entity is after this young boy, Oliver? You know, trying to trick children into becoming its friend, sort of thing, to kind of take them away, which is essentially what it's trying to do. There are times in this film where it targets adults for seemingly no reason at all. It just pops up on their phone. Like the dad, for example, he works at like an all-night parking lot, and he's like a parking attendant. So he's there all night, boring job, and, you know, it targets him a couple of times in there. One on his own, or two, it might have been two on his own, and one when he's there with his son. And then there's another scene where it starts talking to his mum. And basically, it tells the mother what it's planning to do. And you're like, well, you're a bit stupid, aren't you? Why are you revealing your intentions? Because it's just going to put them on high alert. You know, if it had kept its mouth shut, it'd have probably got away with it. You know, it'd probably taken the boy away and got away with what it was trying to do. So, and there's other scenes as well where it appears that it can only appear once you've read the full story. But again, there are moments in this film where it appears and the story hasn't been read. So again, it just it doesn't follow its own rules in the film. It's one of those horror films, if you like, where it sets the boundaries and the rules fairly early on, but then breaks them consistently throughout the film, just for narrative purposes, just for a cheap scare here and there. But I really do think the film had a lot of potential. It also plays around with, you know, the trope that we've seen many, many times in horror films, that this creature kind of lives through electricity. You know, it climbs out of, you know, electronic devices, you know what I mean? Which, again, it doesn't fully explain it. You know, why is this creature turning up on children's phones? Why can it travel through electricity? What is the point of it? What is it? What's it doing? We never learn any of that. Now, sometimes that actually works in a film's favour, especially horror, because sometimes it's best left to the imagination. You know, you can make up your own stories, but this doesn't give you anything. I mean, it literally, very early in the film, it just turns up on his phone. You know, this seemingly, you know, novel on his phone, Misunderstood Monsters, that you just swipe and read. And you're like, well, why? Why is it there? And there's a few scenes where you can, it's watching you from inside the electronic device. And again, so there were some cool ideas going on here. I just don't think it completely explored them, which I thought was a shame. And then it goes from this troubled boy who the parents think is just, you know, it's his autism and he's struggling to make friends and that's why he's disconnecting because they've just separated. So blah, 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 blah. It goes from that to the mother completely and utterly believing what's happening within the blink of an eye, and it comes from this tablet talking to her. But I'm sorry, but if a tablet talked to me and said whatever it says in this film, I wouldn't immediately think, oh my god, there's a monster after my child. You know what I mean? I would probably think it's a prank or it's an app or something like that. But no, it doesn't really go down that road. She goes from a troubled mum with a troubled son, with a troubled marriage, to completely believing there's some creature chasing her son like that. And then it does the same with the father, but the father's more understandable, if you like, how he comes to believe, because he, you know, he actually experiences it. So it goes from one version of the film, which is like this creature pursuing this child, to this other version of the film where it's got to get rid of almost the parents to get what it wants. So while I think this film is a bit unbalanced, I do think it's got quite a few good ideas going for it, and I think the performances are fine. And at times it is a bit creepy, and it does have a decent scare here and there, even if some of them are cheap scares. So I don't think this is a complete waste of your time if you like a fairly well-made horror film. That it was released in the cinemas, I believe, in 2020, but I don't remember hearing about it, so I suspect it didn't do particularly well, which doesn't surprise me, because I suspect critics watching this probably weren't overly impressed, which I certainly do understand. But anyway, check it out. If you've got Netflix and you're looking for a fairly decent horror to check out, come play. You could probably do worse, far worse than this, certainly on Netflix anyway. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this review. I'll be back with more reviews and content on the channel very, very soon.